Doc on the Run. We help injured runners run.
Should I take NSAIDs when I have a fourth metatarsal stress reaction? Well, that's a great question, and that's what we're talking about today on the Doc on the Run podcast. Now, if you get a metatarsal stress reaction, you might be confused for a number of reasons. Number one, you're probably trying to figure out, is it really a subtle stress fracture or what is it? And two, you're probably trying to figure out how to make the pain go away as fast as possible so you can get back to running. And the reason for this episode is that last night I was talking to a physician who actually referred a runner to me who had a fourth metatarsal stress reaction. One of her questions was, would it really be a good idea or not a good idea for her to take something like ibuprofen or some other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, which we call NSAIDs for short? Well, answer's simple. So when you get a metatarsal stress reaction, in this case, it was the fourth metatarsal bone, but you could get it in any of them theoretically. So most often we see it in the second or the fourth, but you can get it in the fifth, you can get it in the third, you could even get it in the first. But what is it? Well, the reason that you're getting pain when you have a stress reaction is that you have swelling within the bone. For example, as a simple analogy, let's say you go to the gym and you start doing lots of biceps curls. You pick up heavy dumbbells, you do biceps curls, and what happens? Well, your biceps muscle gets sore. Why is it sore? Two reasons. Number one, tissue damage. You're actually micro-tearing some of the little fibers in the muscle. You understand that? That's easy. But also, it will actually get swelling as a consequence of that tissue damage. So if you squeeze the muscle and it distends the tissue and stretches the nerves even more, well, it hurts. And a similar thing happens in the bone. What's happening is the covering of the bone, where you have that stress reaction, the periosteum, it actually has fluid between the periosteum and the bone. And when it lifts away, it stretches the nerve endings and it hurts. And so if you take non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, two things can happen. Number one, it does act as a pain reliever. So you may actually get a reduction in your pain without actually removing that inflammatory fluid. If you take non-steroidal anti-inflammatories long enough, it will usually reduce the inflammation, but it doesn't happen immediately. Pain relief happens immediately. So why is that a problem? Well, this is really simple. I mean, it's when the covering of the bone, the periosteum is inflamed like that, we call it periostitis, and itis means inflammation. That's the reason this doctor was asking me about whether or not a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory might be helpful. This is the way I think about it. I was just lecturing last week at the International Foot and Ankle Foundation meeting in Las Vegas, and I gave a lecture called Stress Response, Stress Reaction, and Stress Fractures in Athletes. And I was explaining these differences to all the physicians in the audience. And I told them, I said, pain is the most abundant and most underutilized diagnostic resource available to doctors and injured runners. And I said, I'll bet that I could take any runner, and if I could only listen to their story, only talk to them, only look at their foot, and really track their pain very carefully, I'll bet I could get them back to running faster than if you, as a physician, just use diagnostic imaging, testing, and all these other things to try to figure out when it's better enough for them to start running on it. And so you can't ignore the pain. You should use the pain. The pain is a tool for you to use. So the way I think about it is that what you really want to do is track your pain very, very, very carefully. And so in these early stages, when you first get a fourth metatarsal stress reaction, what you're doing is you're trying to figure out how bad is it. And there's two things going on. You have pain from tissue distension or swelling from the inflammatory response. That's because there's excess fluid in there. You also have pain because you have actual tissue damage. So if you have a crack in the bone and you remove the inflammation, it's still going to hurt a lot when you touch it, move it, step on it, or anything else because there's a crack in the bone and the crack's actually physically moving. But if the pain is only from the distension of the tissue and you get rid of the inflammatory response, but you're paying attention to the pain, it helps you figure out a lot faster how bad the problem really is. So I always tell runners, you should never use non-steroidal anti-inflammatories when you're still in the figure it out stages. You're trying to actually determine how bad the injury is because the severity of the injury is more important than knowing what the injury is itself. And then later, when you've returned to running, it's really on its way to healing, and you have some occasional aches and pains, and you want to take non-steroidal inflammatories at that time. Often I do recommend that, but I do not recommend it as a general rule in the figure it out stages unless there's some very unique circumstances. So if you want to learn more about the strategies I use with injured runners who have metatarsal stress fractures and are trying to get back to running as quickly as possible, the exact same strategies I actually teach to physicians at medical conferences when I go lecture, you can get it for free. It's the Stress Fracture Masterclass, and you can sign up at docontherun.com/stress fracture masterclass. So go check it out, and I'll see you in the training.
Doc on the Run. We help injured runners run.